All right, everyone. Welcome in UGA Football Live with JC Shelton and former Georgia tight end Arthur Lynch. Good to see you again, my man. Long time no see. We were just on here yesterday, and we're doubling up 2 days in a row.
Gotta do it. SEC championship game week. I'm a little under the weather, but dudes play hurt. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, dude. I'm sorry about that, man. I'm sorry you're playing hurt.
We're good.
Well, just think of what Kirby Smart would yell at you in your ear, and that'll get you through the day, brother.
Yeah, it is. It is. Don't worry.
All right, he's playing hurt, boys, and honestly, I'm going to use that as a segue into the injury updates for Texas. I think that's perfect.
Love that.
Yeah, so we talked a little bit about these, Trevor Etienne especially, on last night's show. And on Wednesday night's availability report, there'll be another one this evening. But I don't expect much of a change here for Trevor Etienne, but he is questionable, which is better than doubtful, and it's better than out, right? So I could really see him going and providing another wrinkle for Georgia's offense. Kristen Miller on the defensive line, he had a good game against Texas in that first matchup, just like Etienne did. He is also questionable. And then you have Branson Robinson, who has been upgraded from out to questionable. And he was actually doubtful last week as well. Now he's questionable this week. It'd be good to get him back in. I know Roger Robinson played last week. And then Chauncey Bowen's a true freshman running back. He's got several carries this season. He is also questionable. Let's get into it, Artie. So, interestingly enough, right before we start recording today, Texas revealed that they couldn't find any fans who were responsible for throwing objects onto the field against Georgia in the first matchup.
I love it. They were visiting Georgia fans. Dude.
It says, despite our best effort, we have not been able to identify the individuals at issue. We will take action if new identifying information comes to light. That is Texas AD Chris.
I just want everyone to know, if the roles were reversed, Georgia the Athens police wouldn't have found anybody either.
No, they're just on the roads. They're just on the roads.
Fair. I would be willing to bet some Athens police and UGA police would probably be throwing some of the beer bottles in the stands, but it's all different. Different topic for a different day.
It's interesting, though, when you think about it, because, they levied Texas a $250K fine, right? And I read through the requirements, and one of them was, to fine these people and ban them for a calendar year. And some of the consequences, if Texas weren't to comply, was taking away beer sales from the stadium, which is interesting. I don't know, probably not, but that would be an all-timer for first program in his first year in the conference to have something like that go down. That would be hilarious, to be honest, if you're not a Texas fan. But getting into this again, and Artie, I want to start it with this as far as the game in the matchup here on Saturday in Atlanta's Mercedes-Benz Stadium at 4 p.m. Eastern. We talked about, how hard it is to beat the same team twice. And I feel like that's maybe our overview and our feeling from all of football and in all levels. But interestingly enough, in the SEC championship and the rematches from regular season matchups, the initial winner is 5-2. And that's interesting to me because me and you talked about, we were like, yeah, it's hard to beat the same team twice. I think it is maybe, but at least for the SEC championship, it hasn't been the case. And the only two winners, right, 5-2, the only two winners there have been Kirby Smart and Nick Saban. Kirby Smart in 2017 against Auburn, and then Nick Saban. It's really interesting when you think about it that way.
Who did Nick Saban beat?
I believe, who was it? Off the top of my head, I can't even remember. I looked at it earlier, and it's just it's not hitting for me right now. But I know Kirby Smart's one of them, and Nick Saban is the other.
Auburn was what, 2018 or 19?
It was 17.
Okay. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
Right. So apparently in the SEC championship game, it is more difficult for that to happen. I mean, that initial team who wins that game is usually the person who comes out the victor in Atlanta. Something to think about. Fourth straight SEC championship game appearance for UGA. and 1-2 against Bama in that span. Beat LSU there in 2022. Third SEC championship game appearances total in the conference, behind Bama and Florida with the most losses, 7. All right, Georgia beats Texas 30-15 in Austin, right? And I think you can expect the Longhorns fans to travel to this one already. First year in the conference, you get that Texas money. I mean, why not? I mean, that Georgia-Texas ticket alone was so expensive, and that stadium was absolutely packed out. I think these two programs absolutely travel, and especially Georgia, just being in Atlanta. They always show out and show up. So this might be one of those games to where it is an awesome atmosphere, and I hope it is, even with conference expansion and the college football playoff expansion. I hope it is, because the rest of the conference championships are really struggling to sell tickets right now. They're so cheap, which is really interesting because you have a team like Oregon traveling 2,200 miles right to Indianapolis, which is just crazy to think. If you're a hometown fan, you want to go see your boys in the first Big Ten championship, you got to go all that way.
They're probably going to change that for the other conferences, by the way.
Really?
My guess is they'll end up playing a non-neutral site and do a home. So like the top seed, like first place, right? We'll get the home game. Because like the ACC, anyway, it's different conversation for a different day. But yeah, those stadiums are never full.
Yeah. So I want to touch on this, Artie. I want to ask you a question. So I looked at Quinn Ewers versus good competition. So AP top 25. And numbers are pretty staggering because, there's a lot of hype around him because obviously, he led that team to a playoff appearance last year, played really well, had his moments this year, but it hasn't screamed to me, first round pick, guy who can put the team on his back and win you a game, at least numbers perspective. And he obviously wasn't that against Georgia in the first matchup, but 65% completions percentage. That's nothing bad. 1,162 yards, 10 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. And the biggest part to me here, Artie, is 6.7 average. So you think of this team as, they have Isaiah Bond at receiver, Quinn Ewers there. They're going to stretch the field with Steve Sarkisian and take shots. They haven't been that team against top competition. It's more of a slugfest. And I know we talked about how we expected that to be the case on Saturday. What do you think the reason for that is? Just maybe offensive coordinator hat.
I mean, you set the lead there to make it seem like I was expecting the stats to be much worse. I think.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying they're bad. Let me clarify that. I'm saying.
I was going to say because I think to be fair, I think those are better statistics than Carson Beck has as of today. Right. So is it not? How many interceptions?
Let me look up against AP. We can look it up right now. But what I'm saying, the main thing for me is the 5 interceptions, which are much
Carson
more
had
than
3 picks against Texas alone last time.
Yeah, absolutely. What I'm saying is,
I understand.
Artie, the main thing is the average.
I understand.
Let me go ahead and clarify. 6.7 average. You don't.
I understand what you're saying. I'm saying that I look at those stats against top competition, and I'm like, it's pretty good quarterback. Like 2-to-1 touchdown interception ratio, solid yardage overall, 65% you're completing. I mean, it's not bad. Now, to the point of the question, is it going to be a slugfest? Yeah, I mean, look, Texas is built. Quinn Ewers is the big name, as is Arch Manning. So they have a very popular quarterback room because of that. So people are naturally going to talk about it. But when speaking exactly to the type of game that they're going to be playing and the type of team that Texas is built on defense and running the football. They have a very good defense. They have they have a very good defense. They have a very good offensive line. And they have been, since Sark has been there, they have been, let's try to run the ball as much as humanly possible and dominate the line of scrimmage. Have they always been able to do that? No, but I've always thought that that's their that is what makes that's how they're built. And to be fair, when Sark was at Alabama, that's kind of also how they were built as well. They wanted to be able to run the ball. They just had unbelievable weapons all across the field at Alabama. That the fourth first round pick of their weapons, the running back, had Heisman-like numbers, but there was 3 all-pro caliber wide receivers on the same team. You know what I mean? So it was just I've always thought that Sark wants to run the ball first because he is the way he gets, schematically speaking, there's a lot of motions involved, right? And the more movement you have, and more misdirection that you have from a scheming perspective, that's all built on can you run the ball first, right? Because you want people coming downhill as you want people to coming downhill and not stacking the box, but preparing for the run as you shift in motion because you come off the play action, you do a quick slant, and it puts your receivers at an advantage. So that doesn't really surprise. I think it's going to be a ground and pound type game because I think that's the type of game that Texas wants it to be.
Yeah, and I think that's the case. I'm thinking, from a national perspective, though, and the people that talk about the Texas offense and break it down, at least from a fan perspective, that I see a lot is how explosive this team is. I'm saying they're not. I'm saying they are that ground and pound kind of team. I think the national narrative around them is wrong, is what I'm saying. Look at the numbers and you look at how they play against the top teams. They don't want to do that. They do want to control the line of scrimmage, like you said. They want to focus on Wisner and the running backs. The running back room at first was so injured and really just so many questions there that I think it took them time to get into that mold as the season progressed. But I don't see the explosive capability of this team, and we didn't see that against Georgia for sure. And I don't think all the respect.
That's where I disagree again. I think they have plenty of capability from an explosive perspective, but I don't think that's their. I think I agree with you that the narrative of them being this incredibly explosive team is wrong, not because they don't have the capability of doing so, but because I think that they know what they are. And they prefer to be a run first, control the line of scrimmage and put themselves in a position where they can have explosive plays, maybe not at the rate that people think they have them, but because of the way their offense is constructed. But I think they have I think because of the receivers that they have and because of the quarterbacks that they have that's what makes them scary is they do have that capability and you have to account for it. Right. And you have to account for it through the receivers that you talked about. Now, they're not the most prolific offense ever in the world. I mean, it's not LSU in 2019, but I do think that they have the capability to be very explosive. And they've proven that for sure. I think. In the games I've seen them, but I don't think they're like this juggernaut offensively at the same time.
I think what plays into it is last season and that run last season because they had Xavier Worthy, the fastest man ever at the NFL Combine on the outside. They had a guy like A.D. Mitchell, who Georgia fans are thankful for, even though he transferred to Longhorns. And he's doing well in the NFL when he gets his chances for a struggling team. He also had a really good running back there at Brooks for Texas last year. So maybe they just had better matchups from that perspective of, hey, we can beat 90% of the guys we go man-on-man with. So maybe that's why they were more explosive last year. With that said, Georgia has to stop the run, absolutely. If Wisner gets going like he did last week against A&M, and once he got going, man, they stuck with him, dude. 33 carries. Like, that's a haul. I mean, how many times do we see that in college football? That's not, Big Ten, Penn State versus Iowa.
That's Travis Henry back in the day.
Dude, that's a lot of carries. If he's able to get going.
Derrick Henry, excuse me.
Derrick Henry. I was going to let that slide.
No, you're good.
Yeah, but I absolutely respect that Texas to be the case. And we talked about yesterday about how, you kind of can expect these teams to fill each other out in that first half, man, and see how each other are approaching this game differently, which I'm sure they will. They don't want to play the same, right? Because, Georgia and Texas will be prepared for that if they do. And they've watched the film just like the other has. I think one of the questions for me, Artie, is how does Carson Beck play in this game? He's played a lot better. And, this is a stadium that in the second half against Clemson, he really put on a show, right?
Yep.
And that was really impressive to me. And I think he played decent last year against Alabama. Some unfortunate mistakes there, and then in the fourth quarter put the game out of reach ultimately, even though it was just 3 points and Georgia could have easily won that game. I think he's comfortable in the stadium. Do you think playing in a stadium like Mercedes-Benz with a different field surface than Athens and most college football stadiums, do you think that plays any part to how teams approach a game? Because you hear stuff about like, oh, you're faster on that field and stuff like that.
I don't know if it's – I mean, if it's turf, so it's going to be a little bit faster, and it's indoors, so you don't have to worry about the weather. So it's naturally going to be a faster game, but I don't think it's because we play in the Southeast, I don't think it affects it as much as you would think in terms of the surface. I think the atmosphere for sure. It's very hard to replicate what an atmosphere is like in the Dome for the SEC championship game. And it doesn't really matter who's playing. And obviously, typically it's been like Alabama, Georgia, sometimes Auburn, LSU. It's like, even though it's a lot of Georgia fans when they play, it's like whoever isn't on the other side has, like, it travels well, right? It's one of those rare occurrences, and I'm sure this happens in Jerry's World in Dallas sometimes when they have those games, particularly when it's like Arkansas, LSU or something, right? Where it is loud. It's loud when you're on offense, and then it's loud on defense, right? And you have to account for that. And we would, when we played, we'd be like, typically at a home game, the crowd noise would only come on when the first defense was getting their reps in practice. When we were doing SEC championship game, like, we had crowd noise basically throughout the whole practice, right? Special teams, offense, defense, because you had to get ready to have to be in an away type atmosphere for the entire game. Like, there was going to be no lull, right? Which I think is pretty cool. It's a very unique game, right? Unfortunately for the SEC, it's like people pay a premium to go to it, unlike what we were talking about in the onset here. But that would be the biggest adjustment from my perspective, would be the noise, no matter whether you're on offense, defense, or special teams.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, man, because that's what it feels like being at that game and watching that game, even on TV. It's like it's totally loud all the time, and you really don't see that in normal games. Neutral fields, you can at times, but this game kind of takes the cake, I think, and then momentum is such a huge part. So turnovers, mistakes, they just multiply in games like this against a really good team. So if Carson Beck can stay clean, 11 touchdowns without an interception since over the last 3 games, really good stuff from him, making better decisions, trusting his defense. Remember, most of those interceptions came on first down. Mm-hmm. That's weird. And he has answered the bell with that, not forcing things, which is really good to see if you're a Georgia Bulldog fan. Georgia does lead in drops. We all know that. How do the receivers play, right? Can they put together their second half selves in a full game? If they do, I think Georgia wins comfortably, as in touchdown or more. Let's get into our predictions already. I know you got a hard out here, brother. So Texas 2.5-point favorites, interestingly enough. Total 49.5. And again, SEC rematches 5-2 to the initial winner. What do you got for us here already on your score prediction?
I was just reading Carson Beck, A Tale of Two Halves, first half of the season and second half of the season. I like Georgia to win. It'll be close, probably like a 4-point game. But I think things are starting to come together. I do like the fact that it's going to be indoors on turf. I do think that suits us. I just think Carson's going to play well, and our defense will play well enough to where we will score more points than them. And I think that's going to be the key differentiator, because I do think Carson's going to play well. Now, the problem is, I thought he played well against Tech, but like, there were just so many crucial moments where guys didn't, carry their weight. So that's going to be I'll say this last thing, let you go. Like, my concern about the talent level of this team and whether or not we can win a national championship does not lie in the fact that I don't think that they can or are talented enough to do it or are better than the rest of the country. It's the fact that can we get over ourselves, right? And I genuinely don't know the answer to that. Like if in the first half I see 2 or 3 drops, I'm just gonna it'll be very difficult to do what we did against Georgia Tech against a team like Texas.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yep.
So that's my concern. But I do think if we make the plays that we're supposed to make, I think we win pretty not comfortably, but we win.
Give me a score.
There's 2 scores I can give you. The one where we have 5 drops and the one where we don't have any drops.
Let's say, hey, I'll give you this. Let's say they drop 2. Put it in the middle.
In what situation? We'll just say this: if they play well and the playmakers make plays, I think Georgia could win this game like 28-24, right? Yeah. I don't think it's gonna be like a shootout. I think it's gonna be like a complete football game, or like let's go 32-28. Georgia wins.
32-28. I like it, man. I'm with you on the drop situation. I'm with you that if you make too many mistakes like this against a team like this, who can be really, really physical at times, even though you dominated the first game, does not mean you're going to dominate the second game. It could be a different story. And that Texas offense could be moving, right? They could get them and put you in a situation to where if your offense does not respond, you're going to find yourselves in an unwinnable situation in the fourth quarter. If Carson Beck plays well, yes, absolutely. That is the key. If he's able to overcome some early mistakes, I don't think we're going to go through this game without a Georgia drop, to be honest. How many is the question?
It pisses me off, but yeah.
Do they come in huge situations? Traditionally, in huge situations is when they do not come, right? So as long as that stays the case in this weird, this crazy Georgia regular season that we've had, if they can at least play to their standard as far as clutch situations and make plays. And I think Georgia does stop the run here for Texas, create some problems there, really puts Ewers in a situation where he has to put it on his back. I think we see some Arch Manning in the red zone. I really do.
I think so too.
Yep. And can Georgia defend that? Do they have issues? Can they bottle him up when he's in there in the backfield with an obvious run situation? I like Georgia as well. And I think it's going to be one of those ballot out 10-7 first half. Second half, Georgia pulls away a little bit and the run game gets going. Right, Texas, maybe Georgia takes advantage of some mistakes, which Texas turned the ball over 4 times in that first game. Right, so they've shown some issues there when it is a tight game and making some mistakes. I think Georgia overcomes their own and takes advantage of that from Texas, and we got a 24-21 game. I'm gonna go a little bit lower there. I'm gonna say 3-point game, 24-21.
I'll say this last thing. I think that we caught them. I think we caught Texas by surprise last time. I think Texas probably thought, after what they did to Alabama and Tuscaloosa the year before, I think it was, right? Or 2 years prior.
Yeah.
I just thought they were probably a little bit overconfident. And they probably saw the Alabama game. It was like Georgia doesn't have it this year. So my thing is I look for this team to come to play. I think they're not going to have they're not going to be that careless with the ball. It's going to be, like you said, I think it's going to be a hard-fought game. I think Georgia will win, but we are not going to catch Texas sleeping this time around. That's for sure.
All right. There you have it, folks. UGA Football Live, Artie Lynch, Stacey Shelton. Next time we see you guys is instant reactions after the SEC Championship, which, if you're a Bulldog fan, hopefully ends in a Georgia dub and moving on to a first-round bye in the CFP and really a better trek to a national championship. But until then, we'll see you later, Artie.
All right.